What's going on, guys? Vulkan here, and today we're diving into some new territory with a game called Solasta, Crown of the Magister. Now, this is described as a turn-based tactical RPG based upon the 5.1 rule set for Dungeons & Dragons. Now, in Solasta, you're going to be assembling a team of 4 heroes to serve under the council, but as you journey through the lands and overcome obstacles, your team becomes ensnared in a conspiracy surrounding an ancient item known as the Crown of the Magister. Now, as a newcomer to the whole Dungeons & Dragons rule set, how easy was it for me to get into the source material, and was it an enjoyable experience? Well, let's go ahead and get into that, starting with the very beginning. So when you first begin Solasta, you're highly encouraged to handcraft your team of heroes before starting a new campaign. Now, there are pre-made ones if you want to get right into the action, which is what I ended up doing to learn the mechanics at first, but the hero creation is really well done, and it does offer some deep customization in order to make each hero just how you want them. You get to pick things like your race, your lineage, languages, set up your ability scores, classes, appearance, and a ton of other things, even down to their personality and how they act in conversation, whether they're always like snobby, whether they're too nice, too kind, whether they're always like lawful. There's a ton of different things you can do out there, so it's very, very cool. And from start to finish, it took me roughly 20 minutes to really kind of read through everything and make my first character, kind of carefully kind of planning it all out, right? But if you really want to blaze through it and just get right to the action, you can get each hero done in about half the time. And just like in classic D&D, you need a party of heroes that complement each other, not only with their attacks, but also with their utility. So having a hero that's great at disarming traps is just about required. From what I've seen, there are just tons and tons of traps, and if you don't have somebody who can disarm them, you're going to be missing out on a ton of stuff. But you also need to have other individuals, like someone who's extremely knowledgeable in multiple languages and the lore. And doing something like this is really nice to have because information is a very powerful tool in games like this from what I've experienced. So don't just focus on dealing damage with spells and attacks either, because the supporting abilities that come with each character are extremely game-changing. You have things like mage armors, blessings, increasing your chance at saving throws, and all these other supportive spells that are going to help your team out a lot when things get dicey. So I did say it takes about 20 minutes to make each character to your liking. Now it might take even longer if you're really diving very deep into the granular details of the team, but this was one of my favorite parts of the game. I'm a big deck building guy, so I love to create synergies, weave together strengths, cover up weaknesses. So something like this, I was right at home, kind of handcrafting what I wanted my team to excel at, what I was okay with them being weak at, and what kind of utility I wanted to bring to the campaign. Now, the one big drawback here that I saw from others is that there's no multi-classing available in the game, and some big name classes like the Barbarian, the Druid, and the Bard are all missing, so they're not available in the game right now. So if you're looking forward to playing any of those or mixing 2 classes together, you just can't do that. So don't buy this game going in thinking I'm going to be a Bard Druid or a Bard anything, or mix a Paladin with a Cleric. It's just not going to happen, so keep that in mind. Now, once you do get your team assembled, you can take on the main storyline, Crown of the Magister. And this one comes in a few different difficulties. So first you have story, and this is for players who truly just want to see the story. They don't want to worry much about challenges, setting up their characters, or really dealing too much with the whole technical side. They just want a good storytelling experience. And then the next difficulty is called Explorer, and this is perfect for me because it's aimed at people who are new to rule set games. So if you're not exactly comfortable with all of the dice rolls, the ability scores, all of that stuff, go Explorer, learn everything, and then you can move into the next difficulty mode called Authentic. And this is the true Dungeons & Dragons experience, no modifiers, normal mode essentially, so it's going to be more challenging. Next you have Scavenger, slightly more difficult, enemies are going to deal more damage and you'll have less saving throws. And then lastly, you have Cataclysm. This is nightmare difficulty. Your party's going to take increased damage up to 50%. Enemies will deal more damage, they'll have way more health, and they'll be extremely vicious. So there is a lot to kind of pull in there. So if you want the hardest difficulty possible, go Cataclysm. So the nice thing here is there are multiple ways to enjoy the game, and I'm very glad that the devs went this direction with it. I know that I would not have enjoyed my time as much if I was forced into both learning a brand new kind of experience all of the ins and outs of the rule set and the game while being constantly just destroyed every time I got into a battle. So I like that I can kind of tiptoe into it and then move up in difficulty at any point in time. You just open up the menu, change difficulty on the fly, boom. If Explorer got too easy for me, I can move into Authentic and vice versa. So a lot of cool stuff here, and I like the way that's so flexible. So it's just one of those things where you can constantly change whenever you need to. Now, the story itself has been pretty much a predictable adventure, right? There's some heavy foreshadowing that's almost immediately acted upon, and it doesn't really have a ton of complexity through it. So I'm not saying it's a bad story. It's just one that doesn't really throw anything surprising at you. You're like, oh, yep, saw that coming. Yep, saw that coming. So if you're looking for some like Edgar Allan Poe level of depth, then I would definitely keep looking. But if you just want a kind of well put together, mediocre modern story, then sure, go for it. But it's not the story that really kind of pulls this whole thing together. It's the combat within the areas of this story that really shines for me personally. So for a turn-based tactical RPG complete with the grid, units of movement, it's been very satisfying to play. When you begin a battle, your team and the enemy both roll for initiative, and then that sets the order of events for actions. Now, if you do get jumped with a surprise attack, then you or your enemy will skip their first turn, which is a very powerful buff or debuff for your party. So if you're able to sneak up on some enemies and open the battle with an attack or a spell that you cast, then you have a free turn to set up your team, or you can kill off maybe some of the weaker enemies that you're near. And the whole rolling for initiative thing is throughout the entire combat sequence. You're going to constantly have characters rolling for attacks, saves, opportunity attacks, or certain movement throughout the battlefield. So get used to seeing a ton of dice rolls. So for instance, if you have a character jumping across a gap, then they're going to roll for a dexterity check to see if they can make the jump. If they fail, then they'll make the jump, but they'll stumble, they'll take some damage, and they'll lose their turn. If it's successful, they'll easily make the jump and they'll be able to still perform their main action, such as an attack or a spell, something like that. So same goes for climbing and really kind of most other movements. So there's a lot of checks that go into the game. And this is one of the things that other players were really big on. They liked seeing those dice rolls. They liked the various checks that would happen, whether it was an attack or a movement or a utility or a resistance or a save. And it really took me a few battles to get the hang of it, but now kind of reading all of those rolls is second nature and helps to give the game a lot more character. And with all that being said, I did encounter a few bugs within the combat. These were more annoying than anything, but they were still there. So there were times that the enemy would perform an action and then the game would freeze for about 30 seconds. Now I could still move the camera, click around and kind of check out the battlefield, but the battle sequence itself didn't progress. It was just kind of frozen in time. And then suddenly things would start acting normal again. And I checked online to see if this was a widespread problem or was it just, a me problem. And from what I can tell, it affects everyone. No matter their PC setup, no matter how much, RAM, their GPU, their CPU, doesn't really matter. It's just something within the game itself. So some other issues that I ran into involve lines of sight not reading correctly. Sometimes I could launch a magic spell through a wall, and other times I could clearly see an enemy, but the game stated I didn't have a line of sight to it, so I couldn't cast anything or attack them. Now, it wasn't a big deal for the battle I was in because it was a bunch of goblins, but during a more high stakes fight, that would have been super annoying that I couldn't deal damage on a critical turn where I needed to. Now, outside of combat, you're going to be guiding your party through a variety of explorable areas, all filled with traps, chests, secrets, and some of these things hold some pretty awesome pieces of gear, so it's worth checking out everything rather than just kind of zipping through the area and on to the next battle. And then on a larger scale, your party is going to move from location to location through an automated travel system. So you open up your map, you click on a location you need to move to, and then your party will go there over a certain period of time. You don't do anything, you kind of just watch and wait. And during this time, they're going to consume food, hunt, craft, sing songs, pray, do all kinds of other interesting things. And this is pretty much downtime for you as the player, unless they get a surprise attack at camp. At that point, you basically complete the battle, and then go back to resting, and it's going to kind of kick off that automated system again. Now, I mentioned crafting. This game does have a crafting system that will allow you to take some raw materials and then make things like potions, gear, ammunition, and you can take your character and kind of just put them onto that automatically, and they'll go through and create that as they have time. Usually it's when they're resting or they're traveling. And this is where your character building plays a large role because certain classes and backgrounds will have a proficiency that you can take advantage of. So if you want potions, for example, you can build a character who is talented with herbalism, and then they can go out and make those potions so you don't have to constantly buy health potions. So overall, the story mode was fun. It was engaging, even with the small bugs and kind of like the middle of the road story content itself. And the game also has a built-in dungeon maker, so you can create your own areas to explore and share with others on Steam Workshop. It's a really cool feature that's easy to use and fun to build within. But as fun as the game was, there is a huge glaring issue that takes a lot of the appeal away, in my opinion, and that's that this game is single player. There's no way to play with friends or matchmake or play online or go on an adventure with other people. It's always with computers. And most of the fun in games like this comes from being able to join up with other people and play with other people who have made their own characters. Now, I don't imagine playing D&D by yourself in a room is fun, just sitting there kind of looking over everything. And this game suffers from that exact limitation. So hopefully they'll add it in the future, but for now, if you buy this game, just consider it a solo experience. Now, because I'm a new player when it comes to tabletop and tactical RPGs, I wanted to talk with someone who has spent years of time with those type of games and get their experience. So I got a quote from Wolf1988 in my Discord, who is a veteran Dungeons and Dragons player, has lots of hours in games like Solasta, Baldur's Gate, Divinity, you name it. He's most likely played it. So here's what he had to say about Solasta. So quote, the best way to describe Solasta is if you want a one-to-one adaptation of the 5th edition rule set, then Solasta is the game for any D&D fan. It follows the rules brilliantly, but keep in mind that the 5th edition rule set is the free source material that's available to anyone. And because of this, if people are looking for certain classes, then they're most likely going to be out of luck because not all of them are included in the free material along with certain feats and backgrounds. Overall, for a 15-man team, they did really well. Now, graphics are obviously not at the standard of Baldur's Gate 3, but as I said, if you want a one-to-one adaptation, then it smashes it out of the park. It really feels like you're playing around the table with dice rolls on the screen and grid tactics, etc. A lot of people will say that it's definitely Solasta versus Baldur's Gate 3, but I say if you want strong visuals, then go Baldur's Gate. If you want a faithful game that respects the rule set, go Solasta. The big hang up with Baldur's Gate 3 is that it's a D&D and Divinity hybrid, and that really annoyed a lot of the veteran rule set fans, end quote. So that's from Wolf, and as someone who knows these games inside and out, he seemed to really enjoy himself from a veteran standpoint, and me personally, I thought it was a fun time from the newcomer point of view. Solasta does do a great job of introducing each mechanic to the player. It explains things in a very simple yet digestible way, and I've never played an actual game of Dungeons and Dragons, but after a couple of hours, I was able to understand kind of fully what each mechanic was, how it affected my team, and was able to make some good decisions based off of that. So overall, the game itself was a fun time, but for me personally, it was a one and done. I don't see myself getting back into that world. I feel like I experienced everything it had to offer for a player like myself, and with the lack of multiplayer content, there's just no real reason to go back in there. Solasta is available on Steam today for $40 US, and it's currently still being updated by the developers. So what does everybody think of this game? Have you played it? Have you played others like it, like maybe Divinity Original Sin, Baldur's Gate? If so, how do you think this one holds up? I want to hear from everybody, so let's get talking in the comment section below. And as always, thank you guys so much for all the support. This has been Vulkan, and I'll talk to you guys next time.